my partner in crime, Shannon, to this mix. Let's get rid of the music. Shannon, I hope you're doing well.
You do great.
I love your living room, by the way. And
It's cleaner than the real one.
uh, we're back at it. We're gonna continue this series. We missed a couple of weeks. I miss you, but we're gonna. I said to myself, I said we've got to bring somebody on, and we had Jimmy last time, great
Yep.
interview, and I've had David and a bunch of other folks, and I've had to reschedule a few because I didn't get the right marketing and the right pieces in place. So I was like, okay, who can we get during number one Hispanic Heritage Month, but also someone that I'll introduce once we add them in here for the impact that they have. So Shannon, hopefully everything's been going well on your end. Are you ready to rock?
Always. Lack of sleep too. Let's do this. It looked like I haven't slept in a few days. Oh,
You look phenomenal. Please, let's talk. We could take the sleep thing offline, but yeah, I used to joke with my team, sleep is optional. Yeah, no, not at my age. All right, let's get Dr. Joel in the house. How are you doing, Dr. Joel?
I am doing well. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, I am so excited for this, and there's so many points that I haven't primed you with. And the whole
Mhm.
format, in case anybody doesn't know, is we invite a leader in and we ask them to just speak on leadership skills, what they've learned, like real tactical or anything there. And I said to myself, I was like, I got to get Joel on. I got to get Dr. Joel on. I got to get him on. I'm going to do an intro of how I see you. Then you,
Okay.
you can do a brief intro for yourself. So I met Dr. Joel last year at an Alpha conference down in OC. If you don't know what Alpha is a Hispanic professional development network. Nationally, I believe internationally, I can't even remember. But at the end of the day, he was one of the presenters. And I had the chance to pick between two of three different groups that I could go to throughout the day. He was one of them. I will say one of the best decisions I've ever made. It was timely for
Mm.
me, and it also was something that gave me um, experience and exposure to something that I was interested in. But not just that; it was the follow-ups. And I'm gonna embarrass you, Dr. Joel. Uh,
Okay.
Dr. Joel is a certified coach, executive coach, cultural builder coach, and all kinds of other pieces. He has incredible academic structure and credentials. And he may or may not have recently come out with a book, which is right over his shoulder, Dear White Leader. Right. So from an execution standpoint, as a leader who happens to be Hispanic and academic and tactical, I said I've got to get Dr. Joel in here. So here we are. I want to make sure that we cover as many topics as you want. Obviously, the book, obviously your what you do, but also just kind of to bring to light one key thing. And I don't know if I should hold off on this. Maybe I will. I'm gonna hold off on this one because it
like
was,
the
and
tease
I'll
now.
yeah. Um, let's pin it until you start talking about the book. When you go
Okay.
deeper into the book, then I'll throw that one in there. Dr. Joel, welcome to the Elite Leadership
Yeah.
Series. We're going to memorialize this. It's on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Hopefully, people will see this and will learn and will be motivated by what we can share today. Walk us through who you are, your roots, everything else. Happy Hispanic Heritage Month, and go, brother.
Yeah, no, again, I appreciate you. So, yeah, as Mel said, Dr. Joel Perez, and I'm originally born and raised in Los Angeles. Actually, now living not far from where I grew up. Lived there for a long time. So I went off to college, first generation college graduate. Went to a predominantly white institution, which has shaped the way I look at the world. I identify as a man of color, Latino, Chicano, and that shaped my experience. And I worked in higher education over 20 years, serving in various roles. And then decided to launch my own executive coaching and consulting company, became a certified coach, and now teach in a coaching certification program that actually Mel has attended, and then have been really doing a lot of coaching and consulting. Primarily, I have 3 signature coaching programs. One is for white leaders who want to get better at leading diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging work, but don't know where to start or are feeling stuck. I also coach leaders of color or leaders from historically marginalized communities who are trying to navigate spaces where they're the underrepresented community. And then I coach leaders in higher education or colleges and universities that are getting ready or in the middle of a job transition, and I help guide them through that process. And as Mel said, I wrote a book, Dear White Leader: How to Achieve Organizational Excellence Through Cultural Humility. And cultural humility is something that I've really have latched onto as a leader, moving from cultural competency to cultural humility. I married almost 28 years this December. We have 4 children, ages 13 to 20. They all live at home, and that is as chaotic as it sounds.
Woo!
And we'll see how long that lasts, but they're here. And yeah, just really excited. I'm a son of immigrants. Parents immigrated from Mexico in the late 50s, met in LA, fell in love. Spanish was my first language. And so my parents are still alive, 92 and 89. And that brings a whole set of issues, a whole other topic to talk about as they get older. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell. And I'm also a member of the International Coaching Federation, have leadership roles there, and particularly in the DEI space. And yeah, that's what I do, and that's who I am, and excited to be here.
I love this. I love this. So I love the background. I love the fact
Mhm,
that you've got your core roots here. You
mhm,
stayed generally within the same area.
mhm,
I've been out here a little bit over 4 years. I'm kind of kicking myself for not meeting you sooner than the end
mhm.
of last year, but it's okay. I'll get past that. Um, Shannon, I got to give you some insights into Dr. Joel. Right, he kind of went over some of the groups and the kind of the focus on the leadership pieces. That was the cultural diversity and the kind of assessment piece was part of that uh, um, alpha session that we had. And what I appreciated most importantly out of that is most of those sessions that you attend in other groups or in other organizations are a presentation, kind of their keynote, their TED talk right there, and then maybe some questions. This was an interactive, hands-on, do work kind of workshop, right? Which was not what I expected, right? So I came back with materials that I was like, holy, I'm like, and of course now me in the, I'm, I've been doing sidebar coaching with executives for a while. I'm thinking this is my next level intergalactic world goal. And here I am, have a Hispanic leader who's showcasing tactics, techniques, experience, academics, all of these pieces. And so, of course, he became my idol. But not only that, it was the next transition, like I alluded to earlier, with what he did, which was with the follow ups. He was so damn generous with guidance, with all of the pieces. He put me onto the group that he works with, but also has East Coast training sessions. And I just missed the LA session in December, right? From being able to I think it was in December, and I said no, I'm committing to this. So I decided to do the January session. Now I want to walk you through the logistics of meeting him, doing this, making my decisions, and everything else because I had separated ways with my company in November, December. So I signed up for the January session in Atlanta
Ooh.
because I was like, I'm making a commitment. I did it. I signed up, did that, and then in January, I fly out 2,500 miles in one of the most incredible weekend sessions I've ever been in. I mean, and I showed up real. I don't know, Dr. Joel, if you ever touch base with any of the folks who were in that session. It was just life changing. But in that session was also someone from California, who is about an hour or so away from me, who was taking the same session. So we built a bond there. So the universe puts people in front of you. If you make the connection and you follow up, leaders like Dr. Joel are here. And the reason I say that is for everyone, whether you're white, black, Hispanic, or otherwise, this is the kind of leader you want to follow. That's why it was important for me to have Dr. Joel on here. That's one. Two, um, why don't you give us a little bit more about your book? Because
Yeah.
this is the other topic I'm going to pin.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So the book, and I'll just start off with why the title, because people are like, shit, it's the title. Why is that title? And then people are like, I'm kind of bothered by it. And so I don't know how many of you have ever written a book, but when you write a book, you have to have a target audience. So my target audience is white leaders who are trying to get better at leading DEIB work. And yes, it's provocative. What I have found out in the book writing process is that if you don't have a target audience, you have no audience. So you can't say your book is for everybody, because then nobody buys your book. And so that's why the title, although every concept in the book is applicable to every leader, no matter what cultural group they belong to. All the examples in the book, because I share a lot of my own examples. So one of the things that people talk about that they appreciate about the book is that I'm very transparent, honest, and vulnerable in how I write the book. Sharing my own example, at times I still make mistakes, even as a man of color who grew up in a Latino Mexican American home. I still commit microaggressions. I still have bias, right? And so people have really appreciated that I share those examples in the book. But all the examples of working with my clients, they're my clients who identify as white. And so that is the book. That is why the title. That is the concept of the book. So the book expands on what cultural humility is and how you can use it to navigate the complexity that comes with leading diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging work. Because as we know, that work is complex. It's not what worked 20 years ago doesn't work anymore. Things morph and change. Society changes, culture changes, and so it's about developing this posture of cultural humility, which starts with self-awareness and self-critique. Then it moves to redressing the power imbalances that we begin to recognize in the organizations that we lead and serve, and then ultimately changing systems. And so that's why the title. That's that's why the book, and that's what I hope to get, or I hope to, I guess, communicate and convey to my readers, is that this work is possible, but it does require work.
You're on mute, Mel.
You didn't hear any of those curses, right?
No, but we saw them.
Lips.
We saw them all.
Damn you! Damn you! So, Dr. Joel, I love it. Right? You couldn't be more direct or explicit about the target market, but obviously, it does not have to just be that target market, right? Because as leaders and developers, as HR, as anything where you
Right.
want to be able to learn about the
Yes.
cultural, diversity and the differences, which is something I've been harping on forever, right? Which is why I appreciated the book. Now I'm going to unpin that topic. Shannon, you got to find this link, and I'm going to try to find it and put it in the comments. Just to prove to you why I needed to have him here, if I haven't already proved enough.
You've proved. You don't have to prove it to me. I'm already a fan.
Wait. You just wait. Dr. Joel, the one thing that I wanted to make sure that I highlighted and it was memorialized was your authentic and genuine passion for writing this book. And you could speak to it and you could coach it and you could present on it. You could be a TED Talk. You could be, but the one video that will showcase to you the drive that this man has is the unboxing of your first shipment of the books. I will tell you, Shannon, I watched that effing video twice. And both times, just like he did, I started to tear up because I could
Mm,
feel the passion behind that deliverable,
mhm, mhm.
behind the impact that he was forecasting the book would have. And I will tell you, it was honestly one of the most genuine pieces that I had seen almost anyone post because I could see the emotion. I could feel the emotion. And for that, I wanted to thank you, Dr. Joel.
Appreciate it. Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah, it was an emotional time. I mean, I got the box of books, and it was my first time opening the box. And as a first generation son of immigrants who Spanish, I mean, English was my first language. I mean, Spanish is my first language. To write a book, and I'd always wanted to be an author. I wrote a dissertation, but that's different. Um, to get the box of books and to open it with my kids watching and my wife watching was just so emotional because it was, it was a labor of love, and all the years culminating in this piece that I truly believe can help leaders get better to change themselves and change the organizations that they lead. Because ultimately, it's not just about us. I mean, yes, it's important to develop ourselves, but what does that mean? It has to be more than just us. It has to be about changing systems and organizations to become more inclusive, like we say they are, so that we can help our employees, the people we lead, do better. And it's not just about organizations, but what I talk about in the book is that it changes you, your organization, and the community you reside in, whether your community is your family, the volunteer organization, your faith community. This posture will help you in all those areas. So it's not just about business, but outside of business as well, as how to think about it. And opening that box was so emotional for me because it had been a long time coming. And it finally was was at my porch, me grabbing the box, bringing it to the table, and opening the box up.
And I love that. And again, talk about being genuine, authentic, passionate. It was slathered through
Mm.
that box opening. I know you didn't expect me to call you out on that, and that's why I do this without any prompts, without any questions or anything else.
Mm, mm, mm.
But I did want to highlight that as one of those leadership qualities that you exude. So
Mm.
thank you for that.
Thank
And
you.
honestly, it's you're leading by example.
Mhm.
So I wanted
Yeah.
to make sure I highlighted that.
Yeah.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Mm, mm,
So, all right. So here we are, you know, 1 month out of the year, there's some affinity or some other group that gets highlighted, right?
mhm.
Obviously, it should be throughout the whole damn year.
Right.
But as we look at the evolution in the last year or two, most recent actions across for multiple reasons, right? Whether
Mhm.
anybody want to talk about politics or this, that, the other, I don't really care. But let's talk about the transformation where if you said certain acronyms, you're going to get a stank eye. They
Mhm,
may
mhm,
start with D.
mhm,
They may have an E and an I and a B in it,
mhm,
right? And now it becomes we can't do that. We have to talk about workforce development
mhm,
or
mhm.
cultural integrity or whatever. Walk us through what you're going to see in the next few or in the distant future of how to actually get these goddamn conversations back in play.
Yeah. That's a great question. And what I focus on, it has to be metrics centered. And what I mean by that is, and in the book I talk about this, is if you want to truly be an inclusive organization and hold on to your talent, right? Because we know it's more expensive to hire talent than to retain your talent. And your talent is extremely diverse and or becoming more diverse, and whether that's gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, geography, whatever. You have to do the work. And what I mean by that is you have to get to know your teams. And so that means looking at the data and be data guided. Because if you're noticing that you are not retaining your talent from a particular group, then you probably need to figure that out, right? Because it's expensive, right, to recruit new talent. And so it's about being, what I say, it's about looking at the metrics and being about that. Because if you can demonstrate that, if you want the return on investment that you're making in your talent, then you need to look at all your talent, whether it's women, men, LGBTQ community. And if you want to be a top-notch organization, you have to retain your talent. And you have to also look at the community you serve. And our communities are changing and have not changing, they've changed. And so if you want to be about appealing to different groups and you want your organization to be able to do that, you have to look at the data and what the data is showing you. And so it's not just about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. That's important, but you have to focus on the data that you are seeing in your organization. Because if you say, like I said, if you say you're an inclusive organization, then you have to do the work in creating the environment that's going to help people from those communities succeed and seeing themselves staying at the organization long term. Also, your clients, right? We know that the Latino buying power is immense. We know that the Asian American buying power is immense. So, what are you doing with to relate to that community so that they want to buy your product, right? And so, whether it's Target running ads in Spanish, which is great, on English speaking channels, they know that they are advertising, or people who watch the TV shows they're advertising on are not just English speaking people, right? And so, if you want to attract business from a particular community, you have to be better. And that starts with looking at yourself, meaning you have to tie your efforts to mission, vision, and values. That has to be your guide. And if your mission, vision, values says we want to be about being inclusive, regardless of using the term inclusive, or we want to broaden our business, right? That means you have to become more diverse and inclusive in the way you provide your products, but also in the way that you recruit and retain your talent. And so it's not just about talking about it, but it's about putting it into action. So using those words is great, but if it isn't actually happening and you're not putting effort into creating the organization you want to be a successful organization, then you're going to falter and you're not going to be successful. The organizations that will thrive will be the ones who understand that and aren't afraid to continue to do the work, right? Because they're showing the results, the return on investment, and that is paying ultimately dividends and bettering society.
I love this, right? And let me make sure I'm not muted. Hold on. Okay, I'm not.
You're not muted. We can hear you fully.
All right. So I love this, and we take the last 5+ years, right? This isn't a kumbaya moment. This isn't a and I hate to sound derogatory, and I didn't want to, this isn't you know, give us our slice. This isn't the 80s, 90s. You need to do better for Hispanics and blacks and underrepresented. This is like, and this is why to me it's one of these things where I guess I'm trying to look at the label from inside the jar, right?
Mm.
I'm like, there's quantifiable profit specific business driven strategies and goals that you can achieve by having the cultural diversity, right? So, and I say cultural diversity just so that we don't start getting into the other pieces, right? And that could be personalities, right? That doesn't have to be the actual culture, right? You've got scientific people versus, the motivator, the DISC assessment type of scenario. So that's what I mean by that cultural piece in there, and I'm mixing it in there. So it's not going to be this. Anybody who's listening, this isn't a hire the brown person thing. All right. But it is, but it isn't. Right.
Mm.
um, what is it? What else do we need to do, Dr. Joel, as a world, as a country, and as individuals, or kind of corporations and businesses, to really get that traction that we need? Right? There's government things that we're doing. There's a lot of 4 years ago, the mandates and everything. How do we move forward with, now let's call it workforce development? What do we do?
Be curious, not judgmental. And here's what I mean
Available
by
to you in
that.
Dr. Joel's
Yeah.
store.
Yes. No, it's not my quote. It is Ted Lasso, which I love.
Oh, that is a
But
great, yes, great.
yeah, but aside from that, I think, and I talk about this in the book and when I do workshops, is it's about being genuinely curious about other people. And it's not about compromising your values or beliefs. It's about entering into conversations with this posture of seeking to understand versus seeking to convince, right? And unfortunately, our world has become polarized. And so it's always about hitting the talking points, and we're not actually listening to each other. And so, what organizations and leaders need to do is develop this posture of being curious, right? Not judgmental, asking open-ended questions, seeking to understand, right? Being comfortable with ambiguity, and taking a lifelong learning approach, right? And that starts with getting to know ourselves as leaders, and then recognizing what do we need to improve on in order to be better at the work that we're doing. What do our organizations need to do to be better at the work, at the mission they're trying to accomplish? And that comes with I believe it comes with developing deep curiosity, right? So moving away from our assumptions, biases, and certainty, right? Valuing the valuing the identities and people, being ready to engage in conversations and hard conversations with this curiosity is going to, I believe, move the needle, right? I know they may sound Pollyannish, but it truly is. If we were able to have conversations where we're seeking to understand, we would leave that conversation, I believe, as a better person. We may not change our minds, we may not change the other person's mind, but we have a better understanding, which will then influence the work that we do because we're able to understand the other perspective, right? And yes, that means having hard conversations. And what I tell people, I don't say you have to have hard conversations all the time, because if you don't feel like you can be physically safe, then that's probably not a person you want to have a conversation with, right? But if that other person is willing to sit down with you and have a conversation, and that does take time, it means carving out the time. So deep curiosity, I also think about deep listening, developing deep listening. And we all know this, we always say we're better listeners than we actually are. Right. And so being able to pause and get ready to listen. And the last one is having a growth mindset, because we're going to make mistakes. We're going to say stupid stuff, right? But can we engage in the conversation knowing that we can improve, and we may need to improve? Growth mindset, which requires work. Deep listening requires work. Developing the ability to be deeply curious requires work. But I think ultimately on the other end, we're going to be better people, and we're going to be better leaders because we're able to do that in a way that is genuine and meaningful. It's not about having curiosity with an agenda. It's about truly entering to space, acknowledging that we have biases, but entering into a space with the willingness to listen and learn, and maybe walk away with a different perspective.
You're on mute
When you-
again, Mel. I think he just wants to be able to do the
I was
explicit.
coughing, so I didn't want to.
Yeah,
put that
yeah,
cold,
yeah,
so,
yeah.
So I
It
keep
can
going
hop all the time.
offline.
Before you ask your question,
Ugh.
Dr. Joel, you are amazing. I sadly have to drop, but thank you so much. This has been great. I didn't get to ask my questions, but I will ping you later because I think you're amazing.
Okay.
So,
Oh, thank you.
Throw it in the
I've been
comments on
enjoying
LinkedIn,
listening,
and
to be
I will.
honest with you. I'm like been the person on the sidelines. This is amazing. So I will catch up with you guys later. Thank you so much for your time.
All right.
I'll talk to you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Shannon. I will see you soon. So here we are. Now you're stuck with me. That's it. Okay? That's it. We're done. Right? So Shannon's incredible. She's going through her intergalactic world domination pieces. So we'll try to get her back on in our next session. What I love about what you said, Dr. Joel, is the way I kind of look at it is, if I'm looking at a pie chart of the approach and kind of what's the backing behind not just the book but what you do, is you've got your educational and academic, right? Then you've got the professional certification and experience, and then you have the mission of cultural diversity, and the professional piece is where we got introduced, right? Where you were able to help me create a launch point for what I'm doing, right? So the concepts in ICF, the concepts as ACC, PCC, MCC, all of these concepts from a generic leadership level, right? But also, how do you build in the vulnerability, the acceptance of need, being able to learn, the growth mindset, and all those other tactical things that everybody is talking about, should be talking about, or otherwise, right? To show up authentically and to be a generous listener. I've been battling that shit for about 15, 20 years, right? And, being present and being engaged, right? So this isn't a, like, this is, there is no mystery to this, right? It's effort, it's awareness, and it's acceptance.
Yeah.
That you as a person, as a team, as a leadership, and as a company need to make the time, purposeful and intentional time, to do these type of things. What do you tell these companies that are resource strapped, late stage startup, SMBs, just don't get it? Or maybe they get it, but they don't know how to move forward.
Yeah, what I tell organizations, what I tell organizations is, one, it starts with, again, going back to, sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but it starts with mission, vision, values. So if this is important work for you, it needs to start there. If it's not important, or if it doesn't start there, it's not going to gain traction, because you want to change or build an organization where this is in the water, in the ethos, right? It's not a bolt-on, it's not an add-on. It starts with this, with being inclusive in mind. So mission, vision, and values. If you're able to do that at the start, or able to really leverage and lean into that, it's going to help propel and to get the momentum going forward, so that whatever comes your way, whether that's political unrest or whatever, this is always going to be important, and people know that about your organization. It's going to sustain your efforts, because it's not about hiring a person. It's not about creating a program. It is about genuine work and embedding this in your organization. So that's not to say that it's easy. It's not to say that it's inexpensive, because it is expensive. But the metaphor that I use, it's not my metaphor, it's actually my doctoral advisor's, is a lot like technology. When technology was first introduced, right, it was wonky, it was expensive. But now we can't think of having an organization that doesn't have a client relations management system, or IT, or all the latest gadgets. That's how you need to think about this work. It's just as important as technology, because it's people, right? And people bring their identities to work. And if you want to lead well, you have to be able to engage in conversations with people that are different than you. So again, biases. So putting aside your assumptions, biases, and certainty, and that means being able to develop self-awareness and other awareness. And if you can start doing that, you're going to see where those power imbalances exist, but it starts with mission, vision, and values. And in the book, I talk about a framework you can use to guide the work that you do in creating an inclusive organization. Because if you don't have a plan, right, then you're not going to go anywhere, right? And so you need to develop a plan, or have a plan, a framework to use in getting this work started and measuring the impact. So data guided, right? So it's not just about doing all the busy work and looking like we're busy. It's about then looking at, is this work having an impact on the organization and the people we serve and the people who show up and work for us?
I love this. And here, this is what I hope we one of the messages that we can get out of this, right? Yes, these programs, depending on who you pull in at whatever scale of a company or business that you run, can be expensive. But if you're intentional and you have a few folks within the organization that are passionate enough across the different functions, what's it going to cost you? The 4 or 5 cups of coffee to buy your book and look at the framework and get it. To
Mm-hmm.
implement it may be a bit
Yeah.
much, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at least you'll have a guiding light so that you can say, this is the kind of work that we should do. Maybe adapt it slightly, whatever you can get done internally. But the thing that I love about that, there's two things that you brought up, which are insanely important for anyone who's in a leadership role, looking to do this, running a company, or doing what we do. You do it better, but the coaching and consulting,
Mm-hmm.
is you have to have a framework, right? You have to have an arsenal of specific tactical pieces, workshops, training, tools, and processes that you can customize if needed for the
Mm-hmm.
offering to organizations based on their needs. But also, the biggest portion of this is quantifiable, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've got relationships with folks like Ref and Mattermore and ICQ Global, Disc Ascension, and all these other. Why? Because there's quantifiable, measurable things that you can pull in based on your needs, right? Walk us through not specifics of your framework, but what are you seeing out there that people can say, you know what, we're DIYs, right? We may not be able to hire Dr. Joel or Coach Mel, but we're DIYs. We have enough resources. We'll get 20 interns and we'll figure it out. It'll be hokey. It'll be, the MacGyver version of, a program, but leveraging your book and maybe some guidance from these kind of conversations. What do you say? What kind of tools? I mean, is it just a big spreadsheet? Is there HR systems that have some of these capabilities? Walk us through the DIY version of this.
Yeah, well, again, going back to looking at what you're already doing, right? And whether that's mission, vision, values, but what is it? And I think that the assessment piece is whether it's an employee engagement survey that you're already doing, right? Because a lot of organizations will want to know how their employees are doing. And so you could, the framework consists of 4 dimensions. So institutional vitality or organizational vitality and viability. So, what are you doing to sustain your efforts? Training and development. What are you doing to train your team to develop them to engage in this work? What are you doing to onboard your team so that your new team knows that this is important? So it's not just about doing training once, one and done. It's about how do you build your system so that you're onboarding your team so that they know this work is important and developing themselves. Then looking at the climate of the organization and the intergroup relations, so that could be that employee engagement survey. And then it's about I just dropped the fourth one out of my head because I'm trying to think off the top of my head. But the climate, training, development, and then vitality and viability are and there's a fourth one. So I apologize. I will now rack my brain as I'm talking. But if you're DIY and it starts with looking at what you're already doing, looking at the assessment data you're already collecting, right? And then looking at the data from segmenting it out So you're looking at how are men are experiencing the workplace? How are women experiencing the workplace? How are our team members of color, right? Different ethnic groups. If there's a way to track the how the LGBTQ community in your organization is doing the work, right? Or how they're experiencing the organization. Are there gaps? Right? Are men being more successful and lining up for promotion more than women are? Well, there's a gap. So then it's going in, and how do we address that gap, right? What are some programs we can put in place to help, right? And so doing all this together, so the DIY is putting a group together. So my guess is if you're a smaller organization, you can't hire someone. So it's bringing the right people into into the room to think strategically about how to do this work together across departments. So it's not just siloing. So it can't just be one person's responsibility. It has to be everyone's responsibility to do this work. And you, the leader, the CEO, the executive team needs to communicate that, right, with your governing board's buy in. Because if they're not buying in, then chances are you're not going to get traction, right? And so but you got to make the case of why this is important. But once you have the executives on board, then it's communicating again that this is important and why it's important, and that you're going to
Right.
track the data so that you can show the results, the return on investment. Because if you're not showing results, then it just becomes a bunch of activities that we're doing, and there's no real sense of what progress you're actually making.
Right. Yeah. And again, I love this, and thank you. And I hope folks who are motivated enough to really try to get through what they need to do can get there, because I think there's enough studies and enough major corporations that have been buying into this for 15 plus years, right? From a global
Mhm.
diversity inclusion, but that's at a that's the ones who get the spotlight are at the enterprise level. They're the ones who are putting out those mission statements, and you've got your MasterCards, you've got everybody who's out there and really genuinely building out or rebuilding or creating the programs that are out there, the affinity groups, the champions, collaborating with Alpha and all the Cyversity and
Mhm.
all the other
Mhm.
groups that are out there. But I think the importance of being able to bring that to that middle market, and
Mhm. Mhm.
even to the to the startup realm, is where for me is it's like there's no there isn't much, let me rephrase that, foresight put into the value, right? And if we're looking at companies, right, and we're looking at the let's say a larger company, SMB, or or otherwise, in the last 4 to 5 years, the pipeline of talent, right? So, for
Mhm.
example, a couple of years ago, a few years ago, the pipeline in the federal government of employees that were over 50 was 45, about 45%.
Mhm.
Under 30 was 6.
Mhm.
Now, the government isn't a lucrative piece for young people. Let's be real, right? The dollars
Mhm.
aren't there unless you've got a passion play. You've got a long term career where you've been able to generate all the generational wealth that you want. You're not going to give back necessarily to a potential government role, or you are a true champion of this is the kind of life I want. I want to be give back, do what I need to do, and really not have to push too much to overdo it, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so kudos to anybody who works in the government, works for organizations, nonprofits, everything else. But what do you say to corporations and SMBs who are like, this can be part of your pipeline coming in to not only attract, right?
Mhm.
COVID
Mhm.
slapped us in the face on that one, right? People
Mhm.
just quit.
Mhm.
You had the
Mhm.
the quiet quitting. You had everything else. I may or may not have been a trendsetter on that one. We'll talk about that one later.
Mhm.
Um, what do you like? What do you think that approach could be? So, for example, you can't boil the ocean and get everybody else on board. But what if you
Right.
start to kind of bring it in from the new talent?
Yeah. And by the way, that fourth dimension is recruitment and engagement. So what you were just talking about, recruiting, talent pool. I would say one, again, going back, it all starts with you. You can only control what you can control, right? So if you're not at the
Right.
CEO or C-suite executive level, and you have a unit that you're managing, it could start there. Meaning, what are you doing to develop yourself? Um, but the younger generation, or whatever generation you want to call it, gets this stuff because they have seen it in their schools, their colleges, the what they're desiring in an organization. And
Right.
so if you're going to develop your talent, then it's important to, one, get to know your talent. Who are they? What makes them tick?
Right.
And then to give them the skill set to continue to develop themselves so that they can work with each other cross culturally, right? Because for some folks, they're coming from communities that are very homogenous into a community that is not homogenous, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so, and sometimes people just don't know what to do with that, right? Like, I've never worked with someone of a different race. Now, I
Right.
think this day and age, that's getting harder and harder, but it does require, just like anytime you're putting teams together, the ability to lead across difference, whatever that difference may be, right? And so if you want to recruit talent from a particular group, then you need to cultivate that talent, starting with mission, vision, values. What are you building into how you write your job descriptions so that this work or this mission gets communicated to your prospective talent? And then making sure you're in the interview process, you're asking questions to make sure you can ascertain or understand, do they have that skill set that they can lead and or work across difference. And if that's the case, then once you get them into this, is that onboarding process is super important, right? Not just about communicating mission, but continuing to develop your talent so that you can keep the pipeline going, so you don't turn the faucet off, right? That's why I go back to what I said. It's not the one and done, right? An organization has this huge training program. We do it once. Starbucks, right? For an example, they shut it down, they trained everyone. My question to Starbucks is, what are you doing to continue that work
Right.
in the way you're onboarding your talent? So it's not just one day, but it's built in and baked into the system. But that means evaluating the system to see where there's the gaps, right? Where has it not been happening? And then going in real time, right? So you talk about Peter Sengi's work and creating feedback loops. So when you're seeing that there's gaps, what are you doing to fix those gaps so that the leaky faucet doesn't start and you start losing your talent and they go elsewhere?
Right. Um, you may have seen me drinking my coffee, so
Mhm.
I'm gonna do a little shout out. Hey, Starbucks, if you'd like to hire Dr. Joel and I, we're available. And Elite Leadership Series is looking for a sponsor. I
Mhm.
may or may not live at Starbucks at times, so just
Mhm.
saying, Starbucks, we're
Mhm.
here. Um,
Mhm.
so so again, we've got a ton of different dynamics. We've got a little bit. We've got about another 10 or so minutes that we can chew on here. what what's what's the passion play? What's the cry that you want to like? What's your brave heart kind of mantra that
Mhm.
you want just to scream out at the top of your head to folks and say, outside of the title of your book, right, which is like
Mhm.
spot on. Like, to
Mhm.
me, it's like, hey, dear white people, let's go, leaders,
Mhm.
let's go.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
what's that, your that mission statement that you're like, if I could achieve more of this, go.
It starts with you, but it doesn't end with you, right?
Woo!
And it's a heavy lift because self-awareness is huge in this work, but we don't like looking at ourselves in the mirror, right? I used to have a lot more hair than I do now, right? I used to have better hearing. Uh, but it is who I am, right? And there's things that I need to work on, right? The better hearing piece, my family said, Dad, husband, it's time for you to get a hearing aid, right? I didn't like
Yeah,
it. Um,
good.
but So it starts with you, but then it builds out into the organization. And that's the important piece. The other piece I would say is be curious, not judgmental. So develop that curiosity. The last thing I will share, and I share this in the book and when I do workshops, is that you have to do this work in community. And what do I mean by that? Right? You have to surround yourself with people, mentors, coaches, people in your faith community, friends, family that will hold you accountable, right? That you say you're going to do this work, do the work, but also be able to have a conversation together so you're learning from each other, right? That it's not, you cannot do this work in isolation. You cannot just read my book and say, I got it, I'm done, I know what to do. No, because you're going to make mistakes and you need to have people that you've given permission to say, Joel, you screwed up. You said the wrong thing, but there's a way out of it. And let's talk about this together. Right. So it starts with you, builds in your organization. Right. That's the first piece. Then it's developing that deep curiosity. Right. And all the learning that comes with that. And then you have to do this work in community.
Amen. 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 This is this is the sermon. This is the I love that, right? Like, because that's exactly it. And you know, I try to push people into the mastermind mindset, right? Create that core group of folks that you can trust for different topics, right? You have a
Yes.
core
Yeah.
group of friends and colleagues that you could talk about surfing. You have a core group of friends and colleagues that you could talk about, hair replacement, right? Hearing, or right. You know, subject matter experts in certain things that you can pull together. Not, they don't have to be in the same room, but it could be in a similar conversation. So you're gathering the information, and then when you're ready and you think there's a cohesion there, then you could pull them together and say,
Yeah.
hey, can we work on this? Can we do
Yeah.
this? Hey, let's join this nonprofit. Let's do this. Same thing with work, right? You need that advocacy, that ally, those accomplices, as my great colleague throws out, to say, hey, how do we tackle this together? How do we message this together? How do we, shoulder to shoulder, mano a mano, let's go, right? And it is important, right? A lot of us do go through our careers and our lives by ourselves,
Yes.
right? And the most important thing is you've got, and I say this over and over again, pull in that tribe, right? Who is it that you're going to do? You're going to go move forward with, whether you're a doer, a leader, or anything in between, right? Figure it out, right? You've
Yeah.
got a passion, you've got ideas. So I love that. What do you want to leave everybody with? Like, to get to know you, to get follow up with you. Where do we find you? What's your and by the way, I love the speaking engagements. I love the topics of the speaking engagements. When's your next TED talk? Like, what's going on with you?
Yeah, so thank you. So the way to get a hold of me is LinkedIn. I do a lot, post a lot. I'm there quite a bit. You could go to the book website to learn more about the book. So dearwhiteleader.com. What I'm doing is I'm doing a lot of work in the coaching community. So in December, I will be doing a webinar on cultural humility with the internet, with the Institute of Coaching. I'm speaking at a conference in November. It's a higher education conference. But I'll be doing that. I will be launching a group coaching program in the new year that's topical. It'll be free to begin with. So I'll cover 6 topics, January through June, around how do you, what are microaggressions? How do you recover from them? What is bias? How do you mitigate the impact of bias? How do you develop curiosity? How do you have civil conversations at work in the polarized society that we find ourselves in? Right. And then around the framework. Right. And so those will be topical. So you can come in and out. So you'll learn more about me. And so that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm setting up. Available. You can find out more about me and what I do at apoyocoaching.com. But the book website will tell you more about the book, and you can find my book at any independent bookstore. If you walk in, they can get it. If you're an Amazon person, you can go to Amazon. If you're an Audible person, it's on Audible, and it's also available on electronic version on Kindle.
I saw you posting on the Audible piece. I'm like, yes, right. I
Mhm.
love my physical books, but I love the
Yep.
fact that it's on Audible.
Mhm.
One last thing, because it was interesting when you said it. I was like, explain to people what apoyo means.
Yeah, apoyo stands for support for in Spanish. So the way I talk about my coaching practice, my consulting practice is I listen, bring clarity, provide support. Apoyo coaching and consulting. So
I
apoyo
love it.
is support. Yeah. Thank you for
I love it.
asking,
Right.
Mel.
So that's one. Two,
Mhm.
in case anybody missed it, this incredibly educated, trained author, doctor has just offered you in January a 6 topic free a whole webinar session course, life changing, career changing
Mhm.
opportunity. Uh, Number one, yes, sign me up, include my damn name in there.
Mhm.
I'm there.
Mhm.
Number
Mhm.
two, if anybody has any questions or ideas on what that's going to be, or you've got a 2.5 month runway, 3 month, 3.5 month
Mhm.
runway,
Mhm.
get a hold of Dr. Joel. Obviously, I could be the fallback if he's too busy, but get a hold of Dr. Joel. And then the last thing I'm going to leave you with, Dr. Joel, let's pull our forces together. Let's pull our ideas together to pull you in to some of the efforts I'm doing. Obviously, if you need gum scraped off the floor, just call me. I'll get it done. But
Mhm.
thank you so much. I really appreciate this. Honestly, it's one of those things for me that I wanted to make sure you got as much of the highlight and be able to get your name out there. We'll follow up after this. Any closing tiny comments to your audience and anybody else?
No, I just have appreciated this time. I love talking about what I'm doing and sharing it with people. And so, yeah, I just encourage people to check me out, buy the book, spread the word, and really just appreciative of you, Mal, and what you've brought into the space.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Don't go too far. We're going to end the live streaming, but hang on. And everyone, don't forget, we're going to be here for forever and ever doing this. So stay tuned for the next episode, and I will talk to y'all soon. Thank you.